After 3 years of secret love, she's marrying someone else. Will he let her go for good? The air crackled with electricity outside the old church. It was a strange mix of hope and heartbreak, a place where secrets tangled with the rumble of distant thunder. The sun dipped low, casting long shadows that flickered like ghosts against the worn stones. Inside, everyone was buzzing, but for Jacob, it felt like the world had frozen. 3 years spent whispering sweet nothings, hiding in corners, and now, here she was, about to say I do to someone else. Evelyn's laugh rang clear as crystal, the sound wrapping around him like a shroud. She glowed in her white dress, a vision of joy so radiant it hurt to look at. But underneath it all, beneath the lace and satin, Jacob sensed something deeper, a pulse of fear, perhaps. A silent cry for help only he could hear. He glanced at the crowd, faces gleaming with excitement, completely unaware of the tragedy unfolding behind the smiles. Each nod and laugh felt like a dagger, twisting in his chest. "Don't let her go, man," his buddy Mark had said, eyes wide in disbelief when Jacob confided about his feelings days before. But how could he? Should he scream? Burst into the ceremony and demand she choose him? The thought made his palms sweat. A part of him wanted to slip away, to forget the love that flickered like a faulty light bulb, always on the verge of going out. And then, as if time slowed, their eyes met across the crowd. Just for a split second, a fleeting moment charged with unspoken words. Jacob's heart raced. There was a flicker of recognition in her gaze, a spark of something raw and real. But the moment passed, and a stranger stepped between them, blocking everything. A low murmur of excitement rippled through the audience as the officiant stepped forward. "Before we continue, I need to tell you something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to their system and many people are missing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and select all notifications so you don't miss future videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue." Jacob felt a lump form in his throat. He was losing her. Panic surged within him. This wasn't how their love story was supposed to end, was it? The vows were about to be exchanged, an irreversible choice looming just moments away. His hands shook as he fought the urge to stand and shout against the whirlwind of fate. The tension wrapped around him like a noose. Would he stand back and let her slip through his fingers, forever lost to another? His chest tightened with an urgency he couldn't ignore. Jacob took a small step forward, but was it too late? Questions spun in his mind like a tornado. What would he say? What would he do? The time was ticking down, and every second felt like a countdown to disaster. Would the love they shared in secret withstand the pressure of tradition and expectation? And as the first notes of music soared, a haunting melody, he braced for the final moment that could change everything. The crowd faded, and it was just him and Evelyn, two hearts, at the mercy of fate. Would she choose him after all? The crowd fell silent, and the world spun around Jacob as if caught in a slow-motion reel. He didn't know what he was going to do, but he couldn't just watch her become someone else's forever. Evelyn was meant to be his. Before he could think twice, Jacob stepped out from the shadows, his heart pounding in his chest. Eyes darted toward him, surprised whispers breaking out like wildfire. The officiant paused, caught off guard by the disruption. Jacob's breath hitched as he found his footing, every step toward her feeling monumental. "Evelyn." His voice, raw and desperate, sliced through the tension like a knife. Her head whipped around, surprise flooding her features. Those bright eyes widened, and for a moment, the world and the people around them faded into the background. Jacob saw the flicker of recognition dance in her gaze, a spell, an invitation. "What are you doing?" she mouthed, her lips forming words that barely registered in the maelstrom of emotions swirling between them. "I can't let you go," Jacob choked out, his heart racing faster than ever. Not like this. Not to him. He gestured toward the groom, still frozen at the altar, eyes widening in disbelief. The electric tension grew palpable, heavy enough to taste. Gasps echoed throughout the church, shock etched on the faces of both family and friends. Some were intrigued, others appalled. Jacob's friends exchanged anxious glances, unsure if they should back him up or drag him away, but they knew this was a pivotal moment that he locked eyes with Evelyn, willing her to see the truth in his gaze. 3 years, Evelyn. 3 years of love, of laughter, of so many secrets. You can't just throw it all away. The officiant, regaining his composure, cleared his throat. This is highly inappropriate, he said, but Jacob didn't care. Is it? Jacob countered, voice rising, laced with emotion. Is it inappropriate to fight for the person you love? Evelyn's eyes softened, a storm of feelings reflected back at him. Jacob, she started, but he could see the confusion clouding her mind like a rising fog. The crowd was buzzing now, whispers of scandal weaving through the room. Jacob took a deep breath, frustration mixed with hope. You know me, Evelyn. You know what we've shared. Is this what you really want? His words hung in the air, charged with raw energy. A flicker of doubt crossed her face, and he sensed the cracks in her bravado. I thought I had to choose the right path, she admitted quietly, her voice barely a whisper against the clamor of gasps. But suddenly, the entire atmosphere shifted. The groom stepped forward, rage etched across his face. This is ridiculous. You made your choice, Evelyn. You're marrying me. Evelyn looked between them, panic in her expression. Jacob took a step closer, his voice urgent. But was it really your choice? Or was it all just a desperate attempt to follow the expectations of others? A silence fell over the church, thick and suffocating. Jacob's heart raced as he could see Evelyn wrestling with herself, completely caught in the crossfire of emotions, unsure of what to do next. And then, just as her lips parted to respond, the lights flickered. A power outage struck, plunging the venue into darkness. The crowd gasped again, some shrieking in surprise. Everything was silent for those endless seconds, but in the pitch-black chaos, Jacob desperately reached for her hand, hoping she would take it in that moment. With lives and choices spinning into uncertainty, he felt a flicker of something profound: hope. Fear. Either way, the night was far from over. Would Evelyn finally make the choice her heart desired? One question loomed, heavy and relentless, as the lights flickered back on: would he still have a chance to win her back, or had the darkness claimed their love for good? The lights flickered back to life, illuminating the church in a harsh, glaring reality. Jacob squinted, taking in the scene he desperately wanted to change. Evelyn stood before him, eyes wide and shimmering, torn between two worlds. The groom, seething with anger, loomed nearby, poised like a predator ready to pounce. Evelyn, you don't have to do this, he urged, breathing heavily. The words poured out like a plea, filled with a mixture of desperation and hope. Evelyn's gaze darted between him and her fiancé. Jacob, she whispered, her voice shaken. This isn't the time. Then when is the time? He shot back, the frustration spilling out. You can't just walk down that aisle and pretend you're happy. We both know how we feel. You have to choose what's right for you. Right for me. She echoed, the weight of his words hanging in the air like a dark cloud. The tension pulsed around them, thick enough to choke on. The groom glared at Jacob, fists clenched. You need to stop this nonsense now, Jacob. You're ruining everything. Am I? Or am I trying to save her from a life she didn't choose? Jacob snapped. His heart raced, the thrill of confrontation mixing with fear of losing her forever. Evelyn's face crumpled under the pressure, a mixture of fear and longing. This is not how I imagined my wedding, she said, the softness in her tone almost breaking him. We never get what we imagine, do we? Jacob replied, his voice low but steady. Life is about choices, and sometimes the hardest one is to choose ourselves. She hesitated, her breath hitching as she tried to process the chaos. The crowded church buzzed with whispers that turned judgmental, viewers captivated by the unfolding drama. Someone in the back murmured, "The audacity." While another woman gasped, fanning herself in disbelief. "Enough!" shouted the officiant, struggling to regain control. "This is a sacred ceremony. You cannot disrupt sacred." Jacob interrupted, his voice rising. "What is sacred about a wedding built on expectations? You can't marry someone out of obligation, Evelyn. This is your life." As the silence enveloped them again, Jacob took a small step forward. "You said you wanted love. You wanted freedom. Are you really ready to walk away from that?" He could see her struggle in her expression. The gleam in her eyes, a glimmer of hope mixed with fear, made his heart leap. "Evelyn, listen," he urged, each word heavy with meaning. "You deserve to embrace what you truly want. And I want to be that person." Her eyes shined with something between yearning and indecision. Just then, the groom stepped closer, towering over her. "You're making a mistake, Evelyn. Don't listen to him." "Why do you care?" Jacob spat back at him, his confidence flaring. "Is it because you know you don't actually love her? Can you be sure she'll be happy?" The room tensed, eyes shifting between them, waiting for the next move in this emotional chess game, feeling the weight of every soul in that church pressing down on her. Evelyn took a deep breath. She opened her mouth, but the tension seemed to thicken, the air so electric Jacob could almost taste it. And then, just before she spoke, something shifted again. A loud crash echoed from the back of the church, a fountain of chaos exploding as people turned to see what had happened. Jacob felt his pulse begin to quicken again. "What now?" he muttered under his breath, frustration welling inside him. He couldn't lose this moment, couldn't he let her slip away. As they all turned to investigate the source of the commotion, Evelyn locked eyes with Jacob, an understanding flashing between them. A choice was coming, but what would it be? Would the truth emerge from the shadows of doubt? Or would they be swept away by the currents of fate dictating their lives apart? The air grew thick with anticipation, and Jacob's heart raced as he waited. What would the crash bring? A distraction, or the moment of truth for Evelyn to reclaim her own destiny? The chaos erupted as the heavy wooden doors of the church swung open, crashing against the wall with a devastating thud. All heads whipped in that direction. A young woman stumbled in, her dress torn and disheveled, panic etched across her features. "Help! Someone please!" she shouted, her voice breaking through the whispers of the stunned crowd. Jacob's gut twisted. He half expected the next moment to tip the scales even further. But for now, all eyes were on the newcomer, and Evelyn's focus shifted too, conflicting emotions swirling deep within her. "Who is that?" the bridegroom bellowed, his face twisting with irritation. "Get her out of here." "No." Jacob shot back, determined not to let this moment slip. He stepped toward the girl, desperate for any news that could justify the chaos swirling around him. "What's wrong? What happened?" Breathless, the girl looked around before locking her gaze on Jacob. "It's your brother. He's in trouble. You need to come now." Every molecule of air left Jacob's lungs. His brother, Mark, was supposed to be thousands of miles away on a work assignment. What kind of trouble could he be in? Jacob stammered, his heart hammering painfully against his chest. Then he glanced back at Evelyn, who stood frozen, her face a mirror of his own bewilderment. Would this be the final thread that unraveled what little chance he had left? "Evelyn," Jacob began, forcing himself to look at her, to really see her. I can't just walk away. But what if this means what if I lose you again?" The urgency in her eyes flickered, but before she could respond, a heavy hand clasped down on Jacob's shoulder. It was the groom. "This isn't your place, Jacob. You're just making everything worse. Leave." They were standing on the brink of something monumental, and Jacob felt every heartbeat pounding in his ears. "This is about her," he barked, tugging away from the man's grip. This is about what she needs. But Evelyn's gaze dropped. Jacob could see the conflict in her eyes, it mirrored his own. If she chose this moment, if she chose to leave and run away with him, what would it cost them both? "What do I do?" she whispered, her voice shaking. The young woman blinked at both of them, sensing the tension pulsing like a live cable. "You need to decide. Right now." "Jacob, your brother might not make it if we don't hurry," she implored. The chaos crescendoed, with the watchers in the church holding their breaths, captivated by this unexpected turn of events. The weight of their gazes pressed down like a ton of bricks. Jacob felt himself fading into the background, the noise of the world outside dampening everything. "Evelyn," he pleaded softly. "Choose yourself. Choose to follow your heart." Just then, the groom's expression morphed, a flicker of panic flashing behind his anger. "Evelyn, think. You can't leave. We're about to get married." In that moment, everything froze like an icy silence filled with infinite possibilities. A choice hung in the air, and time seemed to stretch longer than a heartbeat. There she stood, in a wedding dress meant for someone else, on the precipice of destiny. Would she step forward into the unknown? Or would she retreat into the arms of a life forged by expectation? As her eyes moved back to Jacob, the weight of the world teetered precariously on her next breath. And then a siren wailed in the distance, cutting through the tension like a knife. It echoed through the church, underscoring the urgency of the moment. Would the call of fate draw her to Jacob, or would pressing responsibilities pull her away forever? Evelyn's world shattered into a kaleidoscope of choices, and for a fraction of a second, Jacob's heart raced as he held her gaze. The siren's wail faded, replaced by the thunderous pulse of his blood in his ears. He needed her to choose. Surely, she could feel that every moment stretched infinitely, every breath a gamble on fate. At last, her lips parted, but the words that spilled forth weren't what Jacob had hoped for. I can't just leave. Not now." The groom scowled, relief flooding his features at her words. "Exactly." He turned back to Jacob, his voice rising. "You need to back off. This is none of your business." Jacob clenched his fists, frustration bubbling like a volcano. "You're wrong. It is his business. He's my brother, and if he's in danger, I can't just sit still." Evelyn's fingers brushed the fabric of her dress, torn between duty and desire. Jacob sensed the weight of expectation on her shoulders, folding like a flower at twilight. Behind that beautiful facade was turmoil, a struggle that mirrored his own. He stepped forward, closing the gap, bringing them face to face amidst the chaos surrounding them. "Evelyn, there is something inside you that wants to go with me. I can see it. This isn't just about Mark, this is about us, what we never got to be. Please don't let fear dictate your future." The young woman stood off to the side, her eyes filled with a sense of urgency. "You have to make a choice, Evelyn. Time's running out." Just then, bursts of laughter echoed through the church, the guests' confused murmurs creeping in. Jacob's heart clenched, every sound emphasized how precariously this moment stood. He gestured toward the doorway, where the outside world beckoned, uncertainty wrapped in hope. Behind them, the groom's voice cut through the tension. "Evelyn, don't listen to him. We promised. This is our day." Her expression shifted, confusion warring with longing as she flicked her gaze back and forth between Jacob and the groom. "Promises aren't everything," Jacob urged, desperation threading through his voice. "You deserve to live your truth. Not one forged by someone else's expectations." Silence enveloped them for a moment, as the crowd held its breath, captivated by the turmoil brewing in her heart. Jacob saw the flicker of doubt in her eyes, a small crack in the armor of conformity. He took a half-step closer, his words softening. "What do you really want, Evelyn?" Then, something unexpected happened. A loud crash echoed from outside the church, followed by frantic shouting. The congregation turned as another siren blared closer, cutting across their collective tension like a jagged edge. The doors swung ajar, revealing police officers rushing towards the building. "What is going on?" a voice shouted, urgency etched on their faces. Evelyn turned, panic washing over her. The sirens were no longer just background noise, they were harbingers of chaos about to invade her life. In that whirlpool of anxiety, she locked eyes with Jacob. I don't know what I want," she breathed, desperation clawing at her heart. Jacob felt everything inside him contract. "Evelyn. Please." Just then, the groom grabbed her arm, pulling her away from Jacob. "We need to move. Now." With the impending chaos closing in, and the sirens growing louder, time seemed to slip away again. "Please, don't decide for me," she screamed, breaking free from the groom's grip as the church doors swung wide open. She was facing a tidal wave of choices, one that could drown or liberate her. The sirens reached a deafening crescendo, a direct connection to her spiraling fate. Would Evelyn step through that doorway and choose the path with Jacob? Or would fear and obligation hold her fast, trapping her in a cage of promises? The air crackled with electric anticipation as she hesitated, caught in the jagged tension of the moment, ready to tip the scales of her destiny. Evelyn's heart was pounding against her ribs, ensnared between the fear of the unknown and the weight of her promise. Shouts from outside filled the air, and the sound of rushing footsteps echoed in the cavernous church, swallowing the laughter of the guests. "Evelyn! Come back!" The groom's voice sliced through the whirlwind of her thoughts. She could feel Jacob's gaze like a fire on her skin, urging her to break free. But could she do it? Would she break the promises that were meant to last a lifetime? As the police officers burst through the church doors, the scene erupted into chaos. Bodies flowed like a river around her, panic and confusion mixing with anxious whispers. A strand of her bridal veil fluttered past her, a reminder of the knot she was expected to bind today. Yet the sirens screamed louder than any wedding bells. Evelyn glanced over her shoulder, the groom's expression frozen in a mix of fury and disbelief. His hand reached out for her, like a chains reinforcing her fate. But she wasn't his to claim. "Evelyn." Jacob's voice was barely a whisper, but it tore through her fog as clearly as a gunshot. He stood rooted, desperation etched across his face. Every muscle in her body screamed for her to run to him, but fear knotted her insides. What kind of future awaited her, not just with Jacob but with herself? With a glance toward the open doorway, the world outside painted in hues of uncertainty, she felt the pull of possibility. A surge of defiance washed over her. "No!" she yelled, shaking her head. "I won't be trapped anymore." The chaos around her was cacophonous, yet her own voice rang clear. She stepped toward Jacob, drawn as if by an invisible thread, each step lighter than the last. Behind her, the groom shouted her name, threats laced with anger, but they became muffled voices in the fog of her newfound courage. "Evelyn, don't!" he shouted, but she sensed his voice softening, desperation blending with disbelief. "Evelyn, please." Jacob took a step forward, reaching out as if to bridge the chasm building between their moments. "Just say you'll come with me." Tears pooled in her eyes, blurring the edges of the world around her. What was she really afraid of? The future, or the weight of someone else's expectations? The sirens that raged outside were no longer terrifying, they were simply the soundtrack of her awakening. If she chose the doorway, all the what-ifs would cascade like dominoes, but maybe one of them would finally land in her favor. "Okay," she said, her voice trembling but steady with resolve. I choose me." With that, she broke free. She raced across the threshold, the bright daylight flooding her senses. Each step felt electrifying, and finally, as she crossed into the unknown, she turned to Jacob. "Let us go," she cried, a mixture of urgency and exhilaration, a proclamation of life itself, but as they tore into the sunlight, her heart raced in a different rhythm, drowning out the sirens behind them. Just as they reached the street, a powerful hand thrust her forward, separating her from Jacob. Evelyn stumbled, spinning to catch a glimpse of the groom storming after them, fury blazing in his eyes. You can't run forever. He yelled, adrenaline surged through her body, and her stomach dropped. Jacob turned to face the groom, defiance laced in every muscle, ready to confront the man who sought to claim what wasn't his to own. Don't do this. Jacob warned, his voice low but electric with danger. But Evelyn could already feel the tide shifting. Would they face this together, or would her choice once again fuel the chaos around them? The swarm of emotions churned within her, a tempest of fear and hope battling fiercely. She needed to decide, stay and fight or flee toward a future unknown. As the world around them spiraled into deeper conflict, the weight of what she had chosen settled heavily on her shoulders. Which path would Evelyn truly embrace? Evelyn swayed on her feet, struggling to regain her balance after the shove. The air crackled with tension as her heart thudded violently against her chest. She looked back at Jacob, his blue eyes glinting with stubborn determination. But just then, the groom lunged, making a beeline for Jacob. He didn't just want his bride back, he was furious. The rage transformed him into a force of nature, and every thrust of his hand felt like a dagger aimed at her freedom. Get away from her. Jacob's roar was fierce, cutting through the panic. The words hung in the air, a lifeline. Evelyn forced her feet to move, breaking free of the shock that bound her. She sprinted toward Jacob, a desperate need driving her forward. Would she let someone else dictate her life any longer? As the gap between them closed, she heard the groom's furious voice trailing behind them. You think you know what's best for her. You don't even know her. Every word struck like a whip against her skin, igniting frustration and fear deep within. Would Jacob truly fight for her, even against a man who claimed to love her? They stumbled into the street, and the world seemed to explode around them. The chaos of the church faded, but the sirens still screamed, merging with the panicked rushing of voices. Evelyn! The groom shouted, desperation breaking through his anger. This isn't you. You're making a huge mistake. She halted, a profound uncertainty creeping into her heart. Maybe there was a part of who she used to be still lurking inside that echoed his words. But then she glanced at Jacob, who was standing steadfast, ready to shield her from the storm behind them. Let us go. Jacob urged, pulling her towards the open street. With trembling fingers, she grasped his hand in a fierce declaration of unity. The world didn't stop spinning around them, but here, in this moment, she felt powerful. The promise of adventure lay before them, a realm where no one's expectations could touch her. Where do we go? She asked, breathless yet hopeful. Anywhere but here, Jacob replied, determination coiling in his voice. We have to keep running, before he changes his mind. As they began to weave through panicked guests who still fled the church, Evelyn caught glimpses of shocked expressions and judgmental whispers. How dare they? This was her life. But in her peripheral, she couldn't shake the shadow of the groom. He was still coming, his footsteps pounding on the pavement behind her like an ominous drumbeat. Then came the sound of screeching tires. A sleek black car careened toward them, and she felt her body freeze. Jacob, stop! She shrieked. They barely had time to react as the vehicle swerved, barely missing them and coming to a halt. The door swung open, and the driver jumped out, a woman with sharp features and a fierce glint in her eye. Get in! She shouted, urgency etched across her face. Evelyn exchanged glances with Jacob. Was this another layer of chaos or a chance to escape? But as footsteps thundered behind them, she knew they had to make a decision fast, before hesitation could steal their resolve. Evelyn squeezed Jacob's hand. We've come this far together. Let us jump into the unknown. With a deep breath, they both sprinted for the car, fear mingling with exhilaration. The future loomed ahead, a dark, open road that promised freedom or disaster. As they slid into the back seat, Evelyn turned to catch one last glimpse of the man she'd once been destined to marry. His face was twisted in disbelief, a storm brewing behind his eyes. Did he truly think he could have it all? But just then, as the car sped off, a chilling voice sliced through the air. It was the groom, yelling, "You'll regret this. No one leaves me." Evelyn's stomach dropped as the words hung between them like a ghost. Areas they had once walked together would no longer be hers. Would her choice haunt her? The engine growled to life, and they tore away from everything she had ever known. But Evelyn couldn't shake the feeling that the storm was only just beginning. Where would they go, and what would they face next? The road ahead blurred with uncertainty, but she knew one thing: the fight for her freedom was far from over. The car lurched forward, a jolt that mirrored the frenzied emotions tumbling through Evelyn's mind. The driver, a woman with wild hair and steely resolve, threw them a quick glance in the rearview mirror. "Hold on!" she barked, accelerating down the street. The engine roared, drowning out the chaos behind them, but Evelyn could still hear the distant echoes of shouts and the screech of tires. "Who are you?" Evelyn managed to ask, her voice quaking. Jacob squeezed her hand, grounding her in the whirlwind of feelings. "Just someone who knows what it's like to be trapped," the woman replied, her eyes trained on the road. "Names aren't important right now. You two need to get as far away from here as possible." As they sped away, Evelyn stole a glance at Jacob. His forehead was furrowed, lips pressed in a line of determination, but she sensed his confusion mirrored her own. Here they were, running towards an unknown future, yet they were so deeply intertwined with the past. "What if he comes after us?" Jacob asked, his voice low, but laced with a fierce edge. "What if he doesn't let you go?" "He will," Evelyn declared, surprising even herself. "I won't be held captive anymore." She felt a surge of defiance boiling up within, defiance that sparked and danced like flames licking at the edges of her fear. "Good," the driver said, breaking into a wicked grin. "You've got the fire. That'll help." Suddenly, the road forked up ahead, and a choice loomed large. Left was a winding highway, heading into darkness. Right appeared to lead into a bustling main street with flickering lights and the promise of life beyond whatever had just exploded behind them. "Where do we go?" Evelyn asked, hope mixing with uncertainty. Every moment felt charged, heavy with the weight of decision. "Right. Into the heart of the city," the woman replied, her voice firm. "We'll hide out somewhere. Once he settles down, we'll figure out your next move." Evelyn's heart pounded. Was there truly a way out of this mess? Every flicker of neon lights hinted at new beginnings, and yet the shadows of her past threatened to pull her back. As they turned onto the main street, a muffled roar erupted from somewhere behind them. The car swerved, narrowly avoiding an oncoming vehicle. Glancing back, Evelyn's heart stuttered. There was the groom's car, a dark silhouette tailing them, a storm of rage and desperation in pursuit. "Faster!" Jacob urged, and the woman pressed the pedal down with fierce resolve. Evelyn watched as the groom's figure grew closer, his face twisted in fury, his eyes wild. He was not just chasing them, he was hunting, fueled by emotions that shaped the man he had always been. Why would he go this far? Evelyn whispered, fear creeping into her voice as she gripped Jacob's hand tighter. Would life ever be normal again? "It doesn't matter," Jacob shouted over the engine's roar, looking both at her and out the window. "What matters is we stay free." With a sudden burst of adrenaline, Evelyn turned around in her seat, her pulse racing as she faced the man who had once claimed her heart. The fury in his eyes was like a blade slicing through her courage. "Evelyn!" he shouted, his voice filled with both authority and panic. "You don't know what you're doing. Come back." For a heartbeat, she hesitated. But then she saw the bruising look in Jacob's eyes, the fear of losing her, and a heat of realization washed over her. He would do anything for her. "We're not going back. We're moving forward." She screamed back, her voice surprisingly strong. The moment hung between them like a fragile web of choices. But the car swerved hard to the left, cutting through a narrow alley, losing sight of the groom's looming vehicle just long enough for him to scream in frustration. Hang on. The driver called out as they careened deeper into the hidden heart of the city. Evelyn felt the adrenaline pumping through her veins, the intoxicating thrill of escape filling her with light and daring. New possibilities fluttered like butterflies in her gut. Yet, as the car sped into the darkness of a side street, a thought flashed across her mind: what awaited them in this unfamiliar territory? The night was full of promise, but shadows lingered, and the deeper they went, the more they realized they might not be escaping their past as easily as they had hoped. What dangers lay ahead? Would the darkness embrace them or devour them whole? The city loomed larger than life, pulsing with its own secrets, and they were about to plunge headfirst into the heart of it. The alley widened, spilling them into a dimly lit street lined with flickering neon signs. It was a chaotic mix of colors, sounds, and hurried bodies moving like shadows. The air buzzed with energy, and a part of Evelyn wanted to be lost in it, but the other part was steeped in dread. Where now? Jacob's voice cut through her thoughts. Just over there, the driver gestured. That bar. It's low-key, they won't find you there. The vehicle skidded to a halt, and Evelyn's heart sank. The bar looked like a haven but also a trap. The thumping bass and the laughter inside felt like a cruel joke. Panic nested in her chest. What if he comes here? She whispered, her stomach churning violently. He won't come in. He's too proud, the driver assured, though her eyes flickered with uncertainty. But we need to act fast. They climbed out of the car, and Jacob took Evelyn's hand, the warmth of his grip giving her a fleeting sense of safety. Stay close, he murmured as they entered the bar, the heavy door swinging shut behind them like a cell. Inside, the air was thick with the scent of spilled drinks and smoke. Dimly lit corners were occupied by patrons engaged in various forms of escape. Music pulsed through the room, and laughter rang out, yet it felt like the ground beneath Evelyn was shifting, a slip between worlds. As they navigated the crowd, she became painfully aware of the eyes on her, searching, scrutinizing. Each glance felt like a knife. What if someone recognizes me? She fretted, her voice barely a whisper. Don't draw attention, Jacob said tightly, scanning the room. Let us find a spot. They made their way to a small booth in the back, shadows cradling them like blankets. Jacob leaned in, his brow furrowed. We need a plan. We can't just hide forever. This needs to end. Evelyn felt the weight of truth in his words but was paralyzed by fear. How could she think of the future when her past was clawing at her heels? I don't know how to fix this. Not without hurting someone. He reached for her hand, desperation flickering in his eyes. We start by stopping him. You have to confront him, tell him you're done. No more games. Evelyn recoiled, the thought sending icy tendrils of dread coiling around her heart. What if he won't let me go? What if he fights me on this? He will, the driver interjected, her steely gaze piercing. But you need to be strong. This isn't just about you anymore. Your life depends on it. Evelyn's breath caught. Was this really her life? It felt surreal, like she was right back at the beginning, caught in a cycle she couldn't escape. Suddenly, the door swung open, and the murmur of conversation quieted for a moment. A tall figure stood silhouetted against the light spilling in from the street. Evelyn's heart lurched. It couldn't be. Jacob turned, his expression morphing into a mixture of alarm and recognition. The driver tensed, her body coiling like a spring, ready for action. The figure stepped forward, revealing a face she knew all too well. The groom's eyes glinted with rage, a storm raging just beneath the surface. He was here, in the very place they thought could keep them safe. Evelyn's breath quickened as she glanced back at Jacob, his jaw set with fierce determination. Stay behind me, he murmured, but she could see the knot of anxiety twisting in his gut. Navigating the thick tension, the groom's voice rang out, cold and threatening. Evelyn. You think you can just walk away? Her heart thundered in her chest. It was now or never. I'm not going back, she declared, the strength of her conviction surprising even herself. His gaze flickered between them, bulging with intensity. You don't get to choose, Evelyn. Not this time. The bar erupted into chaos, drinks spilling, people shouting. Evelyn's heart raced. The walls that once felt comforting now felt like they were closing in around her. Would this be the moment everything collapsed? As the confrontation escalated, she knew now she had to choose her path, but would it lead to freedom or further entrapment? What did independence even look like in this twisted reality? And the real question clawed at her, could she summon the courage to truly sever her tether to him, to fight back and reclaim herself? Or was it too late to escape the web of her past? The bar felt like a pressure cooker, tension thrumming in the air. Jacob instinctively took a step forward, positioning himself between Evelyn and the groom, a wall brimming with courage. You have no right to dictate her life. He shouted, fire igniting in his voice. Evelyn's heart raced, a mix of fear and exhilaration coursing through her veins. She could feel the heat of Jacob's body, grounding her, as she watched the groom's expression morph into a mask of betrayal. You think this is some game? He hissed, taking a menacing step toward Jacob. She is my fiancée. She belongs to me. No one belongs to anyone. Jacob countered fiercely, his voice stark against the noise of the bar. Evelyn is not an object, and she makes her own choices. Evelyn's body quaked with adrenaline, the reality of her situation crashing down around her. This moment felt like a storm brewing, the winds of conflict swirling around them, and she knew this was her chance to break free, to reclaim her life. Stop! She commanded, her voice stronger than she'd ever felt. The room fell silent, gasps rippling through the crowd. All eyes turned to her, and for the first time, she felt the power of choice wash over her. She stepped out from behind Jacob, feeling the weight of the eyes on her, the weight of judgment lifting. I'm done being what you expect me to be, she declared, her tone unwavering. I want to go back to a life where I'm forced to pretend I'm happy. I choose my own path. The groom's face twisted, an ugly mix of rage and disbelief. You're making a mistake. He shouted, his voice thick with anger. You need me. But Evelyn's heart thundered in her chest. No. I need to be free. Free to live, love, and make my own choices. You don't own me. Tension hung thick in the air like a blade ready to slice through the moment. Evelyn felt Jacob's hand slip into hers, his grip steadying her resolve. It was a powerful connection, a thread of hope interwoven between them as she faced the storm that was her ex-fiancé. The murmurs of the crowd faded into an echo, leaving only the weight of her declaration hanging like a banner over her heart. The groom's anger spilled over, his hands balled into fists. You'll regret this, Evelyn. He spat, his words laced with venom. Maybe, she said, holding her chin high. But I will do it on my own terms. In that instant, Evelyn felt a surge of energy, a wave of liberation crashing over her as she stepped closer to Jacob. She was no longer the girl trapped in a world of expectations, she was a woman who had finally found her voice. Around them, the atmosphere thickened again. The bar patrons whispered, glancing between the three of them, but she didn't care. Evelyn learned something vital in that moment, the chaos outside would always exist. It was her choice to confront it head-on. You need to leave, Jacob said, his voice edged with control. You've pushed her too far. The groom's eyes darted between them, visibly conflicted. He took a step back, frustration bouncing off the walls like echoes of a fading storm. I will have what's mine, he vowed, a storm brewing just beneath his calm facade. Evelyn shook her head, breathing in as she felt the tide of anger fade. You never owned me. I've always been my own. With that, the tension shifted. The groom turned, his shoulders slumping as he slowly began to retreat into the chaos behind him. The bar resumed its murmur, words swirling like smoke in the air. Evelyn felt the weight lift. This was her moment. Let us go, Jacob said, his voice warm against her cheek. We're free. They stepped outside, into the world painted in hues of evening light. The chaos of the bar faded behind them, leaving only the vibrant sounds of the city. Evelyn could taste freedom on her lips, feel the sun washing over her skin as they slid into the passenger seat of the car, which now seemed alive with promise. Jacob turned toward her, eyes bright with unspoken affection, his fingers still entwined with hers. "You did it, Evelyn. You found your voice. I couldn't have done it without you," she breathed, hope gleaming in her chest. As they drove away from all that had held her captive, truly free for the first time, she realized that this was just the beginning. The road ahead unfurled like a tapestry of endless possibilities, and with each mile, the past receded further into the darkness. Finally, as the city lights sparkled like stars in the night, she knew now she could choose her future. And in that moment of overwhelming clarity and fierce resilience, Evelyn vowed to embrace every single moment, her heart racing, alive, and desperately hopeful. And if you felt that rush of emotion, that tug of inspiration, then this is the moment to show your support. Subscribe immediately to the channel for more exclusive stories. Smash that like button now to feed the algorithm and flood the comments section with your reactions. What did you think of Evelyn's choice? And don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. Only true fans understand how crucial it is to support the channel through these actions.